The human groaned softly as he opened his eyes. His body ached from the crash. Smoke still hung in the air outside the broken shelter, and strange sounds echoed from the alien forest. He pulled himself up, dazed and weak, not noticing the figure hiding nearby. She crouched in the shadows, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Her lips curled into a playful smile. The alien girl had been watching him since he arrived, studying the strange visitor who looked so different from her kind. Curiosity burned inside her. She wanted to test him, tease him, maybe even frighten him. And so, while he lay half asleep, she crept closer, silent as a shadow, her delicate hands reaching for his strange human clothes. He turned over in his sleep, muttering softly, but did not wake. The alien girl bit her lip to stop herself from laughing. With a quick motion, she slipped his shirt from under his body. Then she pulled at the trousers, lifting them carefully until they slid free. She stepped back, holding the bundle of clothing against her chest. Her golden eyes sparkled with mischief as she looked down at him. The great human, helpless, left with nothing. She stifled a giggle and darted away, vanishing into the trees like a spirit. The human stirred. A chill wind brushed against his bare skin. His eyes snapped open. He sat up suddenly, looking down at himself in shock. His clothes were gone. Panic surged through him. He searched the ground, thinking they had been burned, destroyed in the crash. But no, this was no accident. Someone had taken them. He felt heat rise to his face. Naked, in the middle of a world he didn't know, surrounded by dangers he couldn't see. His heart pounded. From the tree line, soft laughter drifted to him. He froze, head whipping toward the sound. His eyes scanned the shadows, but he saw nothing. The laughter was light, teasing, almost musical. Someone was mocking him. His jaw tightened. He grabbed the nearest scrap of fabric from the wreckage to cover himself, but it was too small, barely enough for his waist. The laughter came again, closer this time, then vanished like smoke. He stood carefully, every muscle tense. Whoever had done this was watching. He felt the weight of unseen eyes on his skin. He stepped forward, bare feet pressing against the cold ground, every sound loud in the silence. He muttered under his breath, cursing his situation. Alone, unarmed, unclothed, he was more vulnerable than ever. The alien girl watched from above, perched on a branch, hidden behind thick leaves. She pressed his clothes to her face and inhaled deeply, curious about his strange scent. She tilted her head, fascinated. Humans were not common here. She had never seen one up close. His body looked fragile, soft, but his eyes burned with fire. He looked angry now, embarrassed, pacing in circles, trying to cover himself. She almost laughed out loud again, but bit her tongue. Not yet. Let the game last longer. The human's ears picked up the faint crack of a twig. He spun toward the sound, scanning the shadows. Nothing moved. His breath came fast, his chest tight. He knew he wasn't alone. He could feel it. He called out, his voice rough, demanding whoever was there to show themselves. No answer, only silence, followed by a faint giggle that seemed to drift away. He clenched his fists. Whoever it was, they were playing with him. Minutes passed. Every second stretched like an eternity. His skin prickled, both from the cold air and the unseen presence. He bent low, searching for something sharp, something he could use as a weapon. His fingers closed around a broken piece of metal from the wreckage. He held it tightly, though he knew it would not help much. High above, the alien girl tilted her head. He was clever, already arming himself, even in such a state. She found his defiance amusing. Most would cry or hide, but he stood tall, ready to fight even with nothing. She respected that, but her mischievous spirit refused to stop. She would see how long he could endure her little game. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of burning wreckage and the distant calls of strange beasts. He shivered, the cold biting deeper now. He knew he had to move, had to find shelter before nightfall. But he couldn't risk walking into the forest naked. Every step would make him a target. He looked around, desperate, searching for even a scrap of cloth. Then, from the corner of his eye, he caught a flicker of movement. A shadow darted between the trees. He spun, gripping the shard of metal tighter, heart racing. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice echoing in the silence. No reply, just the faint sound of laughter, this time right behind him. He whirled around, but no one was there. His pulse thundered in his ears. Suddenly, another sound cut through the air, footsteps, heavy, multiple, drawing closer from the forest. He froze, every muscle tightening. This was different. Not playful, not soft. These were Hunter's steps, firm and measured. His blood ran cold. He turned toward the trees, clutching his makeshift weapon. The laughter had stopped. The playful presence was gone. What replaced it was far worse. The alien girl's golden eyes widened as she saw them too. Others had come, not friendly ones. She pressed herself against the tree, torn between staying hidden or helping the human she had just teased. Her mischief had brought him to this moment, naked and exposed before real danger. She bit her lip, her smile fading. The human stood, chest heaving, heart pounding, as the footsteps grew louder. Branches cracked, leaves rustled, and shadows moved closer. He tightened his grip, bare skin cold under the alien sky. Alone, unarmed, unclothed, and surrounded. And then the figures stepped out of the trees. The human froze as 3 tall figures came out of the trees. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and their weapons gleamed with sharp edges. Their skin was rough and scaled, their bodies wrapped in bone-like armor. They looked at him the way predators look at prey. The human felt his throat tighten. He clutched the broken piece of metal in his hand, though he knew it was useless against them. The alien girl crouched high in the branches, holding his stolen clothes close. Her playful smile wavered as she watched the scene below. She had only wanted to tease him, but now things were becoming dangerous. The hunters scanned the wreckage, their nostrils flaring as they caught his scent. One of them barked something in a harsh language, pointing directly at the human. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to stand tall, even though shame burned inside him. Naked, armed with nothing but a shard, he tried not to show fear. The hunters moved closer, circling him slowly like wolves. Their voices were deep, their words sharp, and though he could not understand them, he knew what they meant. They wanted him alive, but not for kindness. The human stepped back, his bare feet scraping against the dirt. His eyes darted to the trees, searching for a path to escape. The alien girl leaned forward, torn between laughing at his ridiculous state and feeling guilty for putting him in danger. One of the hunters lunged suddenly, swinging the blunt side of his weapon to knock the human down. He dodged clumsily, barely avoiding the blow, but fell to the ground in the process. The hunters laughed, a cruel sound. They thought he was weak. One reached down to grab him, claws ready. The human slashed upward with his shard of metal, catching the hunter's arm. The alien roared in pain, stumbling back with blood dripping from the cut. For a moment, silence fell. The other hunters looked at each other in surprise. The naked human had dared to fight back. The alien girl's golden eyes widened. She had expected him to cry, maybe to beg, but not this. He stood again, panting, holding his shard tightly, ready for more. His body looked fragile compared to the hunters, but his spirit burned strong. A small smile returned to her lips, though now it was mixed with admiration. The hunters grew angry. They spread out, surrounding him. One rushed in from behind, but the human spun and slashed again, forcing the attacker to jump back. Another swung low, and the human barely leapt aside. His chest heaved, his body slick with sweat, but he refused to fall. Every move he made was desperate, clumsy, yet full of willpower. The alien girl bit her lip. She wanted to see how far he could go, but she knew they would kill him if she didn't act. Still, her mischievous nature whispered that she could turn this into more fun. She reached into the pouch at her side and pulled out a small stone carved with strange markings. She whispered softly, and the stone glowed faintly. She threw it into the bushes behind the hunters. A loud crack echoed as the stone burst into a flash of light. The hunters jerked around, startled. The human seized the chance. He charged at the one closest to him and rammed his shoulder into the alien's chest. The larger creature stumbled, surprised by the sudden force. The human didn't stop. He slashed wildly with his shard, forcing them to retreat a few steps. The hunters snarled, realizing someone else was interfering. They looked around, their glowing eyes scanning the trees. The alien girl laughed softly, unable to hold it in anymore. Her voice drifted down like music. The hunters snapped their heads up, spotting movement in the branches. The human followed their gaze, and for the first time, he saw her clearly. She was perched like a bird, silver hair falling over her shoulders, his stolen clothes in her arms, her golden eyes shining with mischief. The human's jaw dropped. So it was her. She had been laughing, she had stolen his clothes, and now she was toying with the hunters too. He glared at her, anger flashing in his eyes. But before he could shout, one of the hunters roared and leapt toward her branch. She darted away like lightning, moving from tree to tree with ease, laughing all the while. The hunters split. Two chased her. One stayed to deal with the human. The human saw his chance. He lunged forward and tackled the lone hunter, both crashing into the dirt. They wrestled, rolling across the ground. The human drove his shard toward the alien's throat, but the creature caught his wrist and snarled in his face. The human struggled, his muscles straining, his body shaking from exhaustion. Above, the alien girl glanced back. She saw the human locked in battle, his face twisted with effort, his naked body covered in dirt and blood. Something stirred in her chest. He was foolish, but he was also brave. She couldn't let him die. Not yet. With a quick movement, she dropped his clothes onto a nearby branch where he could see them. Then she pulled another glowing stone from her pouch and hurled it into the ground beside him. It exploded in a cloud of smoke, making the hunter cough and stumble. The human didn't waste the moment. He shoved the shard deep into the alien's shoulder. The creature howled, falling back. The human staggered to his feet, gasping, sweat dripping down his face. He looked up at the branch where his clothes hung, almost within reach, and at the alien girl who grinned at him from above. But before he could climb, more rustling came from the forest. He froze. More hunters were approaching. The alien girl's smile faltered. She hadn't expected reinforcements. The human tightened his grip on his shard, chest heaving, eyes darting between the shadows. The laughter was gone now, replaced by the sound of many footsteps drawing near. The game had just turned deadly. The human staggered back, his chest heaving as the sound of many footsteps echoed through the trees. He clutched the shard of metal in his hand, sweat running down his face, dirt clinging to his bare skin. The hunters he had fought were already recovering, and more shadows were moving quickly toward him. His heart pounded. He knew he could not fight them all. He glanced up at the branch where his clothes hung, but climbing now would leave him exposed to every strike. Above, the alien girl crouched low, her golden eyes flashing. She had thought this would be only mischief, a game to laugh at. But now she saw the human truly trapped, his strength nearly gone, and danger closing from every side. She bit her lip. She wanted to keep laughing, but something in her chest tightened. If she did nothing, the strange human would die. And though he was foolish and angry, she didn't want that. The hunters burst into the clearing, their weapons raised, snarling to one another in their rough language. They surrounded the human in a wide circle, their sharp eyes glinting in the dim light. The human stood tall despite his weakness, lifting the shard in his hand. His body trembled, but his eyes burned with defiance. He muttered under his breath that if they wanted him, they would have to fight for it. The alien girl grinned suddenly, her playful spirit returning, but sharper now. She leapt down from the tree, HFY landing lightly on the ground. The hunter's head snapped toward her in surprise. She stood between them and the human, holding one of her glowing stones. Her silver hair shone in the faint light, and her lips curled in mischief. The hunters barked angrily at her, demanding she leave, but she only laughed. The human blinked in shock. He had not expected her to reveal herself, not after all her teasing. He tightened his grip, unsure if she had come to help or to cause more trouble. She tossed the glowing stone high into the air. It burst into a flash of light, blinding the hunters for a moment. She darted forward, grabbed the human's arm, and pulled him toward the trees. He stumbled after her, too stunned to resist. "Move," she hissed in a voice that was both sharp and playful. The human obeyed, running beside her as the hunters roared behind them. Branches whipped past their faces as they fled deeper into the forest. His bare feet bled against sharp rocks and roots, but he kept going, the girl tugging him onward with surprising strength. She laughed as they ran, as if the chase were a game. The human shot her a glare, but she only grinned wider, golden eyes gleaming. The hunters followed close, their heavy steps shaking the ground. The human's lungs burned, every breath sharp with pain. He wanted to demand answers, to shout at her for causing all of this, but the words caught in his throat. Survival came first. They ducked under branches, leapt over fallen logs, and slid down a slope of loose soil. The human nearly fell, but she caught him with one hand and pulled him back to his feet. At last, they reached a narrow gorge, its sides steep and jagged. The human skidded to a stop at the edge, looking down into the rushing water below. His heart sank. Trapped again. The alien girl smirked, clearly not worried. She glanced behind them. The hunters were almost there. Their glowing eyes pierced the darkness, their snarls growing louder. The human turned to her, his voice rough. "What now?" She tilted her head, silver hair falling across her face. "Now," she said with a mischievous smile, "you trust me." Before he could protest, she shoved him forward. He shouted in shock as he tumbled over the edge, crashing into the cold water below. The river swallowed him, dragging him under with its powerful current. He thrashed wildly, fighting to keep his head above the surface. A splash followed. The alien girl had jumped in too, her laughter ringing even as the water pulled her under. The hunters skidded to the cliff's edge, shouting in frustration, but none dared leap after them. The river was too dangerous. They shouted angrily, their voices fading as the current carried the human and the alien girl away. The water was freezing, cutting into his skin like knives. The human fought for breath, coughing and gasping as the current slammed him against rocks. Suddenly, a hand grabbed his wrist. He looked up to see her, hair plastered to her face, eyes still shining with that maddening mischief. She pulled him closer, guiding him through the current. Though small, she seemed to move easily in the water, almost as if it obeyed her. They tumbled together until at last the current spat them out onto a muddy shore. The human collapsed, coughing up water, every muscle aching. He rolled onto his back, chest heaving, and stared at the alien sky above. The girl crawled beside him, laughing between gasps for breath. She dropped his clothes on his chest, smirking. "You're welcome," she teased, her voice soft but mocking. He sat up, dripping wet, and glared at her. His anger burned, but so did confusion. She had saved him, yet she still acted as though everything was a joke. He opened his mouth to speak, but footsteps echoed again, not from the hunters above, but from deeper in the forest near the shore. The girl's smile faded. She grabbed his arm tightly. Her golden eyes flicked toward the trees, sharp now, no longer playful. The human followed her gaze, his body tensing. More figures were approaching, their shapes dark against the faint light. The chase was not over. The human pulled himself to his feet, his clothes still wet and heavy against his skin. The alien girl stood beside him, her golden eyes fixed on the moving shadows between the trees. She was no longer laughing. Her grip on his arm was firm, almost protective, though her smirk returned for just a second when she saw his glare. "Still angry?" she whispered, tilting her head. He didn't answer. His breathing was rough, his body aching, and his eyes locked on the forest. Whoever was coming was not far. The figures stepped out from the shadows, smaller than the hunters, but armed as well. They were scouts, their eyes narrow and sharp. They spoke in the same rough language, their voices low and threatening. One pointed a spear at the human, while another looked at the girl with suspicion. She simply crossed her arms, as if this were all beneath her, her wet silver hair clinging to her cheeks. The human felt the old anger boil inside him. If she hadn't stolen his clothes, if she hadn't teased him, maybe he wouldn't be trapped here. He tightened his fists, but she suddenly tugged his hand, pulling him behind her. She raised her chin toward the scouts and spoke in their language. Her voice was smooth, mischievous, and confident. The human couldn't understand, but from the way the scouts reacted, it was clear she was mocking them. They hissed in frustration, stepping forward with weapons raised. Without warning, she yanked the human's arm again and darted toward a narrow path between the rocks. He stumbled after her, his breath catching in his throat as they raced into the dark. Shouts followed. Spears clashed against stone as the scouts chased after them. The path grew narrower until they reached the mouth of a cave. The girl slipped inside without hesitation, dragging him into the darkness. The cave was damp and cold, water dripping from the ceiling. The air smelled old, heavy with moss and stone. The human pressed a hand against the wall, trying to steady his breathing. His eyes adjusted slowly, and he could see her golden gaze glowing faintly in the dark. She looked back at him, her lips curving in that familiar teasing smile. "Afraid of the dark, human?" she whispered. He shot her a sharp look, but said nothing. He didn't want to give her the satisfaction. The sounds of the scouts echoed outside the cave, their footsteps growing louder as they searched for them. The girl placed a finger to her lips, motioning for silence. They crept deeper into the cave, their feet splashing in shallow pools of water. The human's every sense was on edge. He hated this, being led blindly by someone who seemed to enjoy turning his misery into a game. Yet at the same time, he realized she had saved him more than once. He didn't know why. The cave narrowed, forcing them to walk close together. The girl moved gracefully, her steps quiet, her long hair brushing against the walls. The human tried to follow her lightness, but every rock seemed to scrape under his feet. She glanced back at him, her smile widening as if she found his clumsy steps amusing. He clenched his jaw. Suddenly, a low growl rumbled through the cave. The human froze. It was deep, guttural, and close. The girl's smile faded. She stopped moving, her head tilting toward the sound. The growl came again, louder this time, echoing off the stone walls. The human tightened his grip on the shard of metal he still carried. His chest rose and fell faster, his body tense. The girl leaned close to him, her lips brushing his ear as she whispered, "Not all dangers here walk on two legs." Her tone was playful, but her eyes showed a flicker of seriousness. She stepped back slowly, motioning for him to stay quiet. The human scanned the dark, but he could see nothing. Only the sound of dripping water, the whisper of air through the stone, and that growl, closer now, hungry. Then it appeared. Two glowing eyes blinked open in the darkness ahead. A massive shape moved, claws scraping against the rock. The creature was long, its body covered in scales that shimmered faintly. Its head was low, its mouth wide, rows of sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. The human's breath caught. He had fought hunters, but this was different. This was no intelligent enemy. It was pure beast. The girl smirked again, as if enjoying his reaction. "Still angry at me?" she teased softly. "Save your anger for that." She nodded toward the creature. The beast roared, shaking the cave walls. The sound was deafening, and pebbles rained down from the ceiling. The human braced himself, heart hammering. He had nothing but his shard of metal and his will to survive. The girl, on the other hand, seemed unafraid. She crouched low, her body coiled like a predator herself, her golden eyes burning. The creature lunged forward, claws striking the ground with a thunderous crack. The human barely leapt aside, the beast's tail whipping past him and slamming into the stone. He hit the ground hard, rolling to his feet with a gasp. The girl darted around the creature, moving fast, almost playful in the way she dodged its strikes. She laughed as the beast snapped its jaws inches from her. The human gritted his teeth. She was insane. But without her, he would not last a minute. He steadied his breathing, clutching the shard tighter, waiting for the right moment. The creature turned toward him, teeth bared, saliva dripping from its jaws. His body shook, but his eyes locked on its throat. The girl called out, her voice sharp. "Strike when it opens its mouth!" she shouted, her playful tone breaking for the first time into something serious. He nodded, his muscles coiling, his heart pounding. The beast roared again and lunged. The human dove to the side, then drove the shard upward with all his strength. The point sank into soft flesh near the beast's jaw. It screeched, thrashing wildly, slamming him against the wall. Pain exploded through his ribs, but he refused to let go. He pushed harder, grunting, his teeth clenched. The alien girl leapt onto the beast's back, her hands pressing strange glowing stones against its scales. They exploded with bursts of light and sound, disorienting the creature. Together, they drove it back, step by step, deeper into the cave. The beast gave one final roar before collapsing into the water with a heavy crash. Silence followed, broken only by the drip of water. The human fell to his knees, gasping for air, his body trembling. The girl stood beside him, her lips curved in that infuriating smile again. "Not bad, for a naked fool," she teased softly. The human glared at her, but before he could respond, a new sound echoed from deeper in the cave. A low hum, steady and unnatural, like machines long forgotten. The girl's smile faded as she turned toward the sound. The cave was not empty. Something else waited within. The strange hum grew louder, filling the cave with an unnatural vibration. The human pressed a hand to the wall, feeling it tremble slightly beneath his palm. His chest still ached from the beast's blow, but his eyes narrowed in focus. This was no animal. This was something else. The alien girl stepped forward with cautious steps, her golden eyes gleaming faintly in the darkness. She looked almost excited, as if the danger had only deepened the game for her. They walked deeper into the cave, the air growing colder and heavy with a metallic scent. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, echoing through the chamber. The hum became clearer, rising and falling in a steady rhythm, almost like the beat of a mechanical heart. The human's grip tightened on the shard of metal in his hand. He didn't trust any of this, but curiosity pulled him onward. The girl stopped suddenly, holding out her hand. He nearly bumped into her back. She smirked faintly, glancing over her shoulder. "Careful, human. You're clumsy even when you try to be quiet," she whispered. He scowled, but said nothing. His eyes were on the glow ahead. The walls widened into a chamber, and strange blue light spilled across the stone. When they stepped inside, both of them froze. The cavern was not natural. Smooth pillars of metal rose from the ground, covered in alien markings that pulsed faintly with light. Strange machines stood in silence, their edges covered in dust and moss, but their cores still glowed. In the center of the chamber was a massive door, sealed shut, covered in symbols that shone brighter as they drew closer. The human felt his heart race. These machines were not from the hunters, not from the girl's people either. They looked older, ancient, almost sacred. He reached out a hand toward the nearest pillar, his fingers brushing the cool metal surface. At his touch, the symbols flared with light, brighter than before. The hum grew deeper, vibrating through the stone. The girl gasped softly, her golden eyes widening. She stepped closer, studying him as if seeing him for the first time. It responds to you," she whispered. Her voice lost its usual teasing tone. She touched the pillar too, but nothing happened. Only when his skin met the surface did the light awaken. The human pulled his hand back, staring in disbelief. "What is this place?" he muttered, though he knew she wouldn't answer. She tilted her head, her expression unreadable now, a strange mix of curiosity and unease. "Old," she said softly. "Older than my people, older than yours. This is forbidden." Before he could ask more, the low growl of stone shifting echoed from behind them. The human spun around, his shard raised, his heart pounded. From the shadows of the tunnel, the hunters appeared again. Their glowing eyes fixed on the chamber, their faces twisted with both greed and fear. They had followed the trail, and now they saw what lay hidden inside. The alien girl cursed under her breath. She looked at the human, her playful spark returning for just a second. "Well, naked fool, it seems your troubles aren't over." Her voice was calm, but her body shifted into a defensive stance. The hunters spread out, their weapons gleaming, their gazes flicking from the machines to the human. They barked something in their language, pointing at him. The girl laughed lightly. "They think you opened it. They think you're the key." The human tightened his grip on the shard, sweat dripping from his temple. The hunters were stronger, better armed, but he could not back down. The chamber itself seemed to pulse in response to his racing heart. As the hunters advanced, the light from the symbols grew brighter, spilling across the floor in glowing lines. Suddenly, the massive sealed door at the center trembled. Dust fell from its surface as the markings lit up in a brilliant blue glow. The hunters froze, their eyes wide. The human's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't touched it, yet the door responded to his presence. A deep rumble shook the ground as the seal slowly cracked open. A blinding light poured out from the gap. The hunters shouted in alarm, shielding their eyes. The girl's hair whipped around her face, her smile sharp. "You really are dangerous, human," she whispered, almost with delight. The door opened wider, revealing a vast chamber beyond, filled with more machines, more light, and something large moving within the shadows. The hum rose to a roar, and the air grew heavy with power. The human stepped back, fear and awe flooding through him. He didn't know what he had awakened, only that it was beyond him. The hunters, however, were not afraid anymore. Greed burned in their glowing eyes. They roared and charged forward, desperate to claim whatever was inside. The girl grabbed the human's arm, yanking him aside as a spear slammed into the ground where he had stood. He stumbled, nearly falling, but she pulled him toward the newly opened chamber. "Run," she said sharply, her voice losing its playful edge for the first time. "This place doesn't belong to them." The human hesitated, glancing back at the glowing door. The machines pulsed brighter, almost as if calling to him. His skin tingled with the energy in the air. He didn't understand why, but he felt connected to this place, connected in a way that frightened him. The girl pushed him harder. "Move, or you'll die here." The hunters roared again, their weapons flashing as they closed in. The human gritted his teeth and followed the girl into the chamber, the glowing light swallowing them. The machines hummed louder, the air thick with power. Behind them, the hunters rushed through the doorway. The chamber shook, the ground cracking under their steps. The light from the walls grew blinding, and a piercing sound filled the air. The human covered his ears, but it did not stop. The hunters screamed in pain, stumbling back as the machines reacted violently to their presence. The girl pulled the human behind one of the glowing structures, her breath quick. "It rejects them," she whispered, "but not you." The human looked down at his trembling hands, glowing faintly under the blue light. His heart raced. He was no longer just prey, no longer just a fool stripped of clothes. This cave, these machines, somehow they recognized him. The girl leaned closer, her eyes burning into his. "What are you, human?" she asked softly. Her voice carried more wonder than mockery this time. Before he could answer, the chamber roared again, and from the deeper shadows something massive stirred, its eyes opening with a blinding glow. The hunters froze in terror. The girl's smirk returned slowly. "Now," she whispered, "the real game begins." The ground shook beneath their feet as the hidden chamber came alive. The hum grew into a deafening roar, and the walls pulsed with blue light. The human staggered back, covering his ears, his eyes wide with shock. The alien girl stood beside him, her golden eyes glowing brighter as she stared at the massive figure stirring in the shadows. Something ancient had awakened. A shape emerged, towering and metallic, its body covered in strange markings that matched the glowing symbols on the walls. It was neither alive nor dead, but something in between. A machine with the presence of a beast. Its head turned slowly, and its eyes flared like burning suns. The hunters froze, their snarls fading into silence as fear gripped them. Even they did not dare move too quickly in front of this thing. The human's chest rose and fell, every breath sharp. He gripped his shard of metal tightly, though he knew it was useless. He felt a strange pull, as if the machine was looking at him, not the others. His skin prickled, his heart pounding louder than the hum itself. The girl tilted her head, studying him carefully. "It's responding to you," she whispered. "Only to you." The hunters growled, pointing their weapons at the giant machine. They shouted in their harsh language, voices trembling but still greedy. They thought this was a treasure, a weapon they could claim. One of them stepped forward boldly, raising his spear. The machine's eyes flared brighter. A burst of light shot out, slamming the hunter into the wall. His body crumpled instantly, smoke rising from his armor. The others roared in alarm, but they didn't retreat. They spread out, circling the machine, hoping to find a weakness. The human stumbled back, his pulse racing. He could feel something calling inside his chest, like a vibration linking him to the machine. He couldn't explain it, but he knew one thing. It wanted him. The alien girl's playful smirk returned, though her voice carried a sharper edge. "Looks like you woke up its heart. Maybe it likes you, naked fool." The human shot her a glare, but before he could answer, the machine stepped forward. The ground trembled with each movement. The hunters attacked, their weapons slashing and clashing against its metallic frame. Sparks flew, but the machine didn't fall. Instead, it released another surge of energy, blasting them back. Two of the hunters collapsed, their bodies twitching from the shock. The human's hands glowed faintly, the same color as the machine's light. He stared at them in disbelief. When he stepped closer, the machine's movements slowed, as if waiting for him. The alien girl noticed too, her eyes narrowing with fascination. "It knows you," she whispered. "But why?" The remaining hunters turned their attention to him now. They pointed their weapons, realizing that he was the key. Their voices rose in harsh shouts, and they advanced quickly. The human's breath caught. He raised his shard, but it felt small and useless. The girl darted in front of him, pulling glowing stones from her pouch. She hurled them at the hunters, each one bursting into smoke and light. The hunters staggered, momentarily blinded. "Go to it!" she shouted at him. "Before they kill you!" He hesitated, but the pull in his chest grew stronger. He ran toward the machine, every step pounding against the stone floor. The hunters roared behind him, but the girl kept them back with her tricks, laughing even as she fought. When he reached the machine, he lifted his hand. The glowing symbols along its body flared brighter, spreading out like veins of fire. The machine lowered its head slightly, and for a moment, the human thought he heard a voice, not with his ears, but inside his mind. It was deep, ancient, and hard to understand. He stumbled back in shock, clutching his temples. The alien girl watched with wide eyes, her smirk gone. She realized he was not just some lost man. He was something more, tied to this ancient power. The hunters regrouped, furious. They charged together, weapons raised, determined to cut him down before he could claim the machine. The girl leapt between them and the human, her body moving fast, her laughter sharp. She dodged blades and spears, striking back with her glowing stones. But there were too many. One spear grazed her arm, drawing blood. She hissed in pain, but didn't stop. The human saw her stumble, and rage burned in his chest. He pressed his hand fully against the machine's surface. The blue light exploded outward, filling the chamber with a blinding flash. The hunters screamed, their weapons clattering to the floor as the energy threw them back. The girl shielded her eyes, grinning even through the blood on her cheek. When the light faded, the hunters were scattered, unconscious or dead. The machine stood silent once again, but its eyes still glowed faintly, locked on the human. His body shook, his breathing heavy, but he felt stronger now, as if the machine's power had touched him. His hands still glimmered with blue light, fading slowly. The alien girl stepped toward him, wiping the blood from her arm. She tilted her head, her mischievous smile curling back onto her lips. "You're more interesting than I thought," she said softly. "Maybe keeping you alive was a good idea after all." The human looked at her, his face still hard, but confusion swirled in his eyes. He wanted answers, but there was no time. A faint rumble echoed again, this time not from the machine but from the cave itself. Cracks spread across the ground, and rocks tumbled from the ceiling. The chamber was collapsing under the strain of the awakening. The girl grabbed his hand, her grip strong. "We have to leave. Now." He nodded, still dazed, and followed her as she pulled him toward a side tunnel glowing faintly with blue light. The machine did not move, but its eyes followed them until they vanished from sight. As they ran, the human glanced back one last time, the weight of what had happened pressing down on him. He didn't know what the machine was or why it had chosen him, but he knew one thing for certain: his life would never be the same. The girl's laughter echoed in the tunnels as she led him onward, but her eyes carried a new depth, sharper and more curious. For the first time, her mischief had turned into something else, something closer to loyalty, or perhaps something far more dangerous. The tunnel narrowed, the air heavy with dust and falling stone. They sprinted side by side, the sound of the collapsing chamber chasing them. At the end of the passage, a faint light appeared. Daylight. Freedom. But as they burst toward it, another shadow moved to block their way. The hunters were not finished yet. The tunnel shook as dust rained down from above. The human and the alien girl sprinted toward the faint glow of daylight, lungs burning, every step heavier than the last. But when they reached the exit, their hearts sank. A group of hunters stood blocking the way, weapons gleaming, eyes glowing with fury. Their armor was cracked from the earlier blast, but their rage burned hotter than ever. They had survived, and now they wanted blood. The human's grip tightened on his shard of metal. His body ached from the battles, his skin bruised, but he stood tall. The alien girl moved closer to him, her golden eyes flashing. This time, her smile was sharp but not mocking. She knew playfulness alone would not save them now. The hunters snarled, stepping forward, their leader pointing a heavy spear directly at the human. "You really are trouble," she whispered, glancing at him. He gave her a faint glare, his chest heaving. "You started it," he muttered under his breath. Her lips curved in the faintest smirk. "Maybe, but I'm not letting them finish it." The hunters charged. The cave exploded into chaos. The human roared, swinging his shard with desperate strength, blocking a strike that would have pierced his chest. The alien girl darted beside him, her glowing stones bursting into light and smoke as she hurled them with quick, precise movements. The hunters stumbled, coughing, but they pressed on, their numbers overwhelming. The human fought with raw fury. He slashed at one hunter's leg, forcing it to collapse. Another swung a blade, grazing his arm and drawing blood, but he refused to fall. His body screamed in pain, yet his spirit blazed brighter with every strike. He was done being prey. He was done running. The alien girl laughed sharply as she danced around her enemies. Even in battle, her mischief never fully vanished. She ducked under a swing, leaped onto a rock, and kicked a hunter back with surprising force. Clumsy, but strong, she teased, glancing at the human as he wrestled with another attacker. He gritted his teeth, shoving the shard deep into the alien's chest, dropping it lifeless at his feet. But more poured forward. The human's vision blurred from exhaustion. His knees nearly buckled. A heavy strike knocked him against the wall, stars bursting in his eyes. The hunter raised his blade for the final blow. In that instant, the alien girl darted in front of him, her arms spread wide, her body shielding his. The blade slashed across her side, blood splattering the stone. She cried out but did not move away. The human's eyes widened. Rage erupted inside him, hotter than fire. With a roar, he surged forward, grabbing the hunter's arm and twisting with all his strength. Bones cracked. The alien screamed in agony before collapsing, lifeless. The other hunters hesitated for a moment, surprised by his raw fury. His eyes burned with something that made even them step back. He turned to the girl. Blood stained her silver hair, her golden eyes dim but still glowing faintly. She smirked weakly. "Don't look at me like that, human. It was only a scratch," she whispered, though her voice trembled. His chest ached at the sight. She had teased him, tormented him, left him naked and humiliated. But now she had stood in front of him, ready to die for him. The hunters growled, circling again, furious that their prey refused to fall. But before they could strike, the ground shook violently. From the tunnel behind, a blue glow erupted. The ancient machine's roar thundered through the cave. Its eyes blazed like suns, and energy crackled across its body. It had not been left behind. It had followed. The hunters froze, fear finally cracking their anger. The machine stepped forward, its massive form filling the tunnel with blinding light. Its power surged, the glowing symbols on its body matching the faint glow still lingering in the human's hands. The connection had not faded. The human felt it again, an invisible thread pulling him to the machine's heart. He raised his hand without thinking. The light from his palm answered. The machine unleashed a wave of energy that slammed into the hunters, hurling them into the walls. Their screams echoed as their bodies crumpled one by one, the light burning away their strength. The cave shook, rocks tumbling, but the machine stood steady. When silence fell, the ground was littered with fallen hunters. The human dropped to his knees, gasping for air. His hand still glowed faintly, but the strength in his body was nearly gone. The alien girl stumbled beside him, clutching her bleeding side, her face pale but her smirk still alive. She knelt next to him, her golden eyes locking onto his. "You are not just a fool," she whispered softly. "You are something far more dangerous." He met her gaze, his chest heaving. For once, there was no anger in his eyes, only confusion, exhaustion, and a strange spark of respect. He had hated her mischief, cursed her tricks, but she had saved him again and again. She leaned closer, her lips curling into that playful smile he had grown to know. "Don't think this means I like you," she teased, her voice weak but mischievous. "You're still clumsy, still naked in my eyes." Despite the pain, a small, tired smile tugged at his lips. He shook his head, unable to find words. The machine's glow dimmed slowly, retreating into silence once more. It stood like a guardian in the shadows, its eyes still faintly burning, watching him. The cave ceiling cracked above, dust falling in heavy streams. They could not stay. The girl pulled weakly at his arm, urging him to stand. He forced himself up, his body trembling, and together they limped toward the exit, stepping over the broken bodies of hunters. When they finally emerged into the open air, the alien sky stretched wide above them, stars burning bright. The human collapsed against a rock, sucking in deep breaths of freedom. The girl sat beside him, leaning her head against his shoulder. Her silver hair brushed his skin, sticky with blood, but her smile remained. "Next time," she whispered, her voice soft as the night wind, "maybe I'll steal more than your clothes." His eyes widened slightly, but exhaustion claimed him before he could respond. The last thing he heard was her soft, mischievous laugh as the stars shimmered overhead, promising that the game between them had only just begun.